Disregard the witness's entire testimony. Can the jury actually do that? Day 3 of Adrian Gonzales' trial wrapped up on Thursday, and here's what happened. It's a great day for a great day. My name is Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. The morning started off with the continuation of witness number 4, Stephanie Hale's testimony. Again, remember, she left off at cross-examined. There was this whole mistrial motion, and then she came back Thursday morning to finish up her testimony, and something shocking happened at the end of it. At the end of her testimony, the defense motioned to have her entire testimony stricken from the record and the jury to be told that they have to disregard it. The prosecution said that they felt like everything had been cured through cross-examination. If the judge felt necessary, he could always give them a curative instruction. There was some bickering going back and forth between the parties, and then the judge finally said, "I've had enough. I am striking her entire testimony." Called Hale back to the stand, told her what was happening. He even talked to her and said that, it wasn't her fault, and explained his own traumatic event that he had went through and how, sometimes those details can change. He and his wife were hit by a drunk driver, and kind of just let her know that this isn't her fault. Then the jury was brought back in. They were told to disregard all of her testimony, and they moved on to witness number 5. Witness number 5 was Amelia Marin. She is the after-school program coordinator at Robb Elementary. She discussed the school's lockdown procedures, turn off the lights, and lock the door. She was discussing with another teacher about preparations for the end of the year party for her program, and that teacher left to go to the store to get some of those snacks. When that person came back, he told her to meet her at the northwest entrance to open the gate so he could get in, so they didn't have to carry it back and forth through the school. She propped the door open with a rock because she didn't want to have to keep locking and unlocking as they brought the things in. She was outside at the gate when she heard the monster's truck wreck. She closed the gate and then ran to the school to get her phone and call 911. As she was running to the accident, she sees the funeral home workers running as well. Then they stopped and turned and ran away, and they yelled, "He has a pew-pew." And then she ran back to the school and told the operator he had a pew-pew. As she ran back in, she thought she kicked the rock away to close the door, and then her 911 call was played. She then said after the call that she was going to go back out to make sure that everyone was safe, but something stopped her. She looked at the door and then the counter and then ran under the counter in her classroom. She was extremely emotional during this testimony, as you can imagine. She was in her classroom for about 40 to 45 minutes. She said the shots were nonstop, that they would stop momentarily and then they would start again. She kept thinking that he was going to unalive her and that she was going to die. She discussed her plan of action if he would come into her classroom. She was asked how to describe that fear so the jury could understand, and her response was very simple. Unless you've been through a mass shooting before, you would never understand, and that the feeling haunts her to this day. On cross-examination, the defense had her clarify some details regarding her testimony, and then she confirmed her prior testimony as well. He made sure to tell her that he's not blaming her or saying that she did anything wrong because she didn't do anything wrong. She discussed what she reviewed prior to her testimony and then how her perception at the time could have been wrong. She was asked about the bailout issues, where, people have accidents, they bail out because they're not citizens of the country. And she said that she had only been there for a month and she really wasn't sure about that, and in particular to the school area. She said that the school did not have a full-time officer and doesn't know if anyone has ever complained about it. Witness number 6 was then called to the stand, Jose Hill. Now, he was getting ready for work when he heard some noises. He lived near the school. He grabbed his phone and started recording someone about to go into the school. He sent the video to law enforcement. And then on cross-examination, he said that he started recording because he couldn't see very well. And he was like, is someone actually going in there? And are they actually holding a pew-pew? And witness number 7, FBI agent Hui Nguyen, was called to the stand. He is a human agent, and he goes out and gets informants, and then he also does evidence processing. He and his team are called to Robb Elementary to process the scene on the outside of the school on the day of the incident. They take photos of the scene, and they were looking for casings. Then several photos were admitted through this witness into evidence. And then before cross-examination, the jury was excused for lunch. Then after lunch on cross-examination, they asked him to describe kind of what he does for crime scene investigation and with pew-pews and the techniques that are involved with that. They talked about a Leica scan and how that was not done by the FBI. He didn't have to worry about DNA because that it's essentially not what they were there looking for. And he said that DNA is quite stable, whereas, the defense did point out, there are people who differ on whether it is stable or if it's unstable. The defense had him agree that they can make an educated guess on where someone was based on how everything is looking, but they cannot say for sure because they were not there. They did a visual search and then a physical search, and they also flagged stuff along the way. They walked through the processing of the scene at that time, and then they talked about a red flag. It means, you're going to look at it again. A yellow flag is where you're going to pick stuff up from. And then they discussed how metal projectiles were laying and how they were laying, which direction, which angle, and what it could signify. And then there was some back and forth about redirect and recross examination based on that same exact thing. Witness number 8 was then called to the stand, and that was Lynn Denning. She was a 4th grade teacher at Robb Elementary at the time of the incident. She discussed the lockdown procedures, Locks, lights, out of sight. The day of the incident, she was going to take the kids out for recess a little bit early. As they were heading out, a student said that coach was yelling. The student really didn't know why the coach was yelling, but then she heard something that sounded like fireworks, and she had the kids come back inside and told them to go to the classroom and hide. She closed the blinds, and as they were hiding, she heard something crash into the windows, which ended up being metal projectiles coming through those windows. Students asked her if she had been hit as she was crawling over to them, and she said no, but the students indicated to her that she had a hole in her shirt and there was a red stain there. She didn't realize it at the time because of her state of shock. She did not see the monster and thought there could have been multiple people. She told students to pray and that she loved them and that if something happened to them, one of the last things that they heard to be that they were loved. Traumatizing. It also texted her husband and let him know what was going on. And she said that her students were the strongest, most bravest people on earth. During cross-examination, she explained that usually during training, police officers weren't there. She said that Robb Elementary School did not have an assigned officer. She was never in trouble for having her door not locked, but can't say for other teachers. She was not aware of magnets to keep the door from locking or unlocking. She never made it outside the door to see what was happening. 4 students went home after the awards ceremony because her students liked to stay with her. So she still had a majority of her students with her at the time. Then witness number 9, Nicole Ogburn, was called to the stand. She was a teacher at Robb Elementary. She heard a noise that sounded like metal hitting a brick and at the time assumed the custodians were outside working. She went to a window and saw a guy dressed in black with mid-length hair and saw a pew-pew pointed toward the playground and pavilion area. They didn't have enough time to leave the classroom, so they hid. As they were hiding, a student tried to lay across and protect her, telling her it was going to be okay. I cannot even imagine. That student obviously has the biggest heart ever, but in that time, all he cared about was consoling his teacher, not that there was these crazy things happening around him. Like, what a brave kid, right? They were evacuated from the classroom by law enforcement and they went through the window to get out. She was the last person to leave the classroom. On cross-examination, she said that room 102 was more of a general ed classroom with some special ed students. She discussed the lockdown procedures, and she did not get notification until 11:36 that the school was going into lockdown. And she got it from her watch because she didn't have her phone at the time. And she said she learned afterwards that he actually went into the building at 11:32. Then they discussed the amount of drills they do per year and, things like that. After that, she was excused from the stand and there was a break for the jurors. And witness number 10, Kevin Wright, was called to the stand. Now, he's a Texas Ranger, and on that day, he was dispatched to go pick up the crime scene trailer and to go to Uvalde to process the scene. He arrived later on in the afternoon. His assignment was to help identify the victims. I cannot even imagine. Parents provided photos of their children, and they used that to identify the victims inside the school. Photos were shown to the jury of the windows with holes in them from the metal projectiles. And then after that, the jurors were dismissed for the day. And after such a heavy day, they probably needed it. So day 3 was a little bit crazy with one witness's entire testimony being stricken and then going through some very emotional witnesses and very traumatizing things to hear. So that wraps up day 3. Day 4 will continue on Friday. Thanks for being here. Thanks for following along. And here's the question of the day. Even though the judge instructed the jurors that they could not take into account this witness's entire testimony, do you think that they can actually separate from that or differentiate from that? Or do you think it's always going to stay in their head and could be used in part of their decision making, even though they're not supposed to? Let me know in the comments.